Dalton takes a shotgun snap. Quick throw. Caught by Green. It is a touchdown. Adriel Jeremiah Green.
You don't live in Cleveland, you live in Cincinnati.
Hello and welcome to episode 102 of CinciNatter, the Bengals UK podcast. And of course we're cock-a-hoop this morning, recording this on Monday afternoon because the Bengals won their first game of the season against the Jacksonville Jaguars yesterday, 33-25. Yes, friends, we are on the board, and let's hope it's the first of many. Joining me to discuss yesterday's game is none other than Nathan Palmer. Hello, Nathan.
How you doing, my son? I'm sure I speak for all Bengals fans when I say I've got a nice warm glow about me this morning as the Bengals are finally on the board. Fantastic win. I think it's been a long time coming where we get a good win early in the season where it matters. So I'm absolutely buzzing off the back of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think, it was a tight first half, but that second half they really pulled away. A bit like the Philadelphia game last week. It was a tight first half and they kind of struggled to move the ball a little bit apart from a 2-minute drill at the end of the half. And like the Philadelphia game, they let in a score right at the end of the half as well. So that's obviously has to be worked in. But in the second half, they pretty much steamrolled them, really. There was a few anxious moments towards the end, but they did well. They closed it out. They did everything that we asked them to. You know, they got the run game going in that second half. Burrow was magnificent again. Tyler Boyd was great. T. Higgins was catching balls. And crucially, the offensive line played better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Bengals in that game yesterday really exercised the fact that they were a better team than the Jags all round. I think in all phases. I don't think the Bengals were necessarily fantastic yesterday. I don't think they played to their potential, but they played well, and they had a better team than the Jags, and they just out-muscled them. I think the result, at half-time, there was a few nerves going around. Obviously, we were slightly behind, but exactly like you said, we exercised our muscle in the second half, and I think the massive credit to the offensive line. I think they took an absolute beating. And, you know, in some ways, rightly so after that game last week against the Eagles, but they rebounded so strongly. I don't think Burrow was sacked once. They kept him pretty much clean throughout the game. Joe Mixon had a huge game off the back of them opening up some holes for him. So I think you just got to give credit where it's due. I don't know if that's to Alex Redmond coming back into the lineup and sort of secured that right-hand side, but whatever they did, it worked. It could just be the inferior opposition. I know the Jags front is not going to be necessarily as good as the Eagles, Browns or Chargers, but you've got to give credit where it's due. It looked like a different situation out there for the offense.
Yeah, I agree, and you're right to say that this really was the game to get things going because, as you rightly said, you know, the Jags aren't that much, unfortunately. They've got a lot of good young players finding their way. They've got some injuries. Their pass rush isn't great. So yesterday really was the day for the offensive line to get some confidence, to get themselves in sync and start playing and protecting Joe Burrow much better. And it absolutely happened. And again, you know, as we said, the Jags are no great shakes, but they've got some weapons on offense. They kept things close. They provided a few anxious moments, but on the whole, you're right. The offensive line played very well yesterday, especially after all the hits that Burrow has taken during the past few weeks. It was great to see him relatively unscathed yesterday. But still, going into half-time, they couldn't open up any running lanes to Joe Mixon, could they?
No, and I think that at half-time, I think everyone was sort of scratching their head a bit with that run game. Because through 3.5 games, there really hadn't been too much. I know Mixon had the catch out of the backfield for his first touchdown, but in that second half, something just seemed to click. You know, there was a lot of holes for him, and that run, the 36-yarder he had on the outside, I mean, that was incredible for him. I mean, he was virtually untouched. I mean, I think all of the Jags defenders sort of bought on the inside. Mixon got to the corner, and you were not going to catch him there. So he really just stepped up massively, and we need that. I've been critical of Joe Mixon in the past for not playing well when it matters for the Bengals at the start of the season. When you're 4, 5, 6 games behind 500 at the back end of the season, that's one thing. But he really proved his class yesterday. 151 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. And then in the run, I think in the passing game as well, he had 6 catches yesterday. And it's extremely uncharacteristic for him. He'll get the odd 1 or 2 normally, but 6 catches yesterday for 30 yards and a score. And that's the guy, that's the reason that you pay him if he can give you that sort of performance.
Yeah, I agree. And we should also mention Gio Bernard as well, who had a good game and made... Every time Gio touches the ball, you think, God, he's still got that crazy speed, that playmaking ability. They've got to use him more. And yesterday he ripped off a really nice run round the corner. And then they repeated it, pretty much the same play where Mixon, as you say, went for 30-odd yards. I just like the fact that they went in at half-time and they seemed to make some serious adjustments. And we'll be talking to our special guest, Matt MINICH from Cincy Jungle, the fantastic Matt MINICH, a bit later on about perhaps asking him what those adjustments might have been. Because I'm intrigued, because again, nothing was working running-wise in that first half, and yet they came out a completely different team in the second half. You saw Jonah Williams on the move. There was a fantastic block, I think, for Mixon in that second half down the field. There was a lot more sort of pulling and movement and linemen getting onto that second level, making such a difference. Drew Sample was involved. Okay, you could argue that he dropped 2 touchdown passes in that first half, and we kind of thought, here we go again. But, he was active in there. Ethan Carter was active. So, I tell you what's interesting to me, Nathan.
Go on.
Basically, Marvin Lewis's teams were fantastic right at the start of games when they were working through their scripted plays at the start of each game, right? And then they always used to have a nightmare third quarter, and then God knows what would happen in the fourth. But it seems to be the complete opposite with Zach Taylor's teams. It starts off slowly, struggling a little bit to move the ball until one frantic, brilliant 2-minute drill, which is another way this team is different to Marvin's teams, who are generally dreadful in those sort of situational moments. But in the second half, after some real adjustments at half-time, that's when the team gets going. And I find that interesting, whether Zach struggles to put a game plan together offensively, I don't know. But yeah, it's just an interesting thought, an observation. I don't have any stats to back things up, as I never do, but it's just it's just an observation, really.
No, it's a fair one. I mean, I think the team's still struggling to find its identity under Zach Taylor. I think more than anything else, is a massive win for confidence. I've said it before. You need some confidence. We need those players to have a bit of fire in their belly. And as Joe Burrow tweeted out after the game, winning is fun. And I think that team desperately needed that, because they're now 1-2-1. And you've got a chance at 1-2-1. I mean, the AFC North is particularly strong this year, but you're a game off of being one win against the Ravens, and you're above 500. And I think the Bengals, they know they've got talent. I think if you look across this team, there's talent there. There really, really is. And I think they just need to get those wins on the board. It doesn't matter if it's against the Jags or it's against Bengals UK. I just think getting that belief that they could win these games, you could see in the locker room after the game, everyone's fired up as you are. You've got the win. We're still competitive at the moment. I just think what we couldn't afford is to drop back to like 0-4-1, 0-5-1, something like that. And then you just feel like you're playing for pride down the stretch. I want this team to have a taste this year of being in the running for the playoffs. We don't even have to make it, but even if you can get 6, 7, 8 wins and be knocking on that door and keep things interesting, I just think it'll be so positive for the players and for the organisation. It'll give Zach Taylor some confidence, because you've got to think for him, after a bad year last year, bad start this year, he needs some wins to make sure make sure he's got a job next year. Maybe he starts coaching more aggressively, So all round, it's just a massive confidence boost for the team. Doesn't matter who it's against. And I'm very, very pleased that they were able to get over the line yesterday.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? And just think, I mean, yes, it feels great to win, but automatically you think, God, if we'd have beaten the Chargers and beaten the Eagles, which we could and arguably should have done, we would have been like 3-1 now. How ridiculous would that have been? And then, I don't know.
I agree. There's some serious talent. There's some serious talent on the team. I think we have to talk about Joe Burrow, and I think he epitomises that talent. I mean, he's more than was advertised. I thought he'd be really, really good, and I thought there was, very, very high chance the geezer would be a top 10, top 5 quarterback in years to come. I mean, he's a top 10 quarterback right now. I mean, the geezer, the first quarterback in history as a rookie to throw for 300 yards in 3 straight games. The poise is unbelievable. I mean, he just sat back there. He completes those balls over the middle for 8 and 10 yards, just like he's over the park. I mean,
it's like me and you over Hampstead Heath, isn't it?
It really is, mate. Yeah, with no one around throwing 10 yards to each other. But, it is. I mean, the geezer's just he drops back and, I mean, his accuracy is incredible. He threw an interception yesterday. It wasn't his fault at all. I mean, he hasn't thrown a really bad pass that I've seen yet in 3 games. I mean, the one he threw for the interception, the first one was a bit of a weird sort of sidearm.
He did miss AJ Green wide open.
Fair enough.
I think that's the only one. But you're right. He's carried on his record-breaking ways, isn't he? He's the first rookie quarterback to pass for 300 yards in consecutive games. It's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think the way he's playing at the moment, and I'm not one to get overly excited too soon, but he's a top 10 quarterback the way he's playing at the moment. Without a preseason, his supporting cast is good. I mean, he's got good receivers there. T. Higgins he's been the surprise for me because I always think rookie wide receivers always struggle to sort of make an impact, and you're assuming you're going to have Tyler Boyd there. You're assuming you're going to have AJ Green getting more than he has. And I think for T. Higgins to be coming out the way he has and getting that chemistry with Burrow is fantastic. So I think all round for Joe Burrow, if that line can play like it did yesterday, we're going to have some serious success.
Yes, and I'll go back to my point last week. When you watch Joe Burrow pass, and it was one of the things of watching the Amez, as we used to call it at school, on the telly, is that you see a quarterback release the ball, and then you kind of wait with bated breath to see who it's aimed at as the camera catches up with it. And with Andy Dalton, your heart was always in your mouth, quite frankly, or my mouth, because you weren't, there was a 50% chance that it was going to be complete or an interception or an incomplete pass. With Joe Burrow, I expect already, like you, I really hate overhyping players, but with Joe Burrow, when that ball, every time that ball it leaves his hand and the camera sort of pans to the receiver, I expect that ball to be caught. That's how good he is at the moment. I expect him to complete more passes than not already, and this was his 4th game. It's ridiculous. He's brilliant. I'm in love with him.
Mate, I think you speak on behalf of a lot of Bengals fans. I mean, he is. I mean, he's phenomenal, and he's got that mobility, I think, which we haven't seen from a quarterback for the Bengals for a long time. Andy Dalton didn't really have it. Carson Palmer certainly didn't have it. And I think that just changes the game. He's not. Joe Burrow's not going to be the type of quarterback like a Lamar Jackson who's running for 100 yards a game, but he's just athletic. He gets to the outside. He makes people miss. He can step up in the pocket. And I just think it gives a bit of a headache to the opposing defenses that they have to factor in for that. It helps the running game out because, what's he going to do? Is he going to take it himself because he's got that ability to run with it? You don't want him taking too many hits, but I think that's another part of his game, that not only the sort of poised pocket passing and the accuracy, but the fact that he does give you that athletic ability on the outside and where he can just sort of pull it down himself and take it on.
There was one fantastic play yesterday. It was in the second half where the Jaguars blitzed a guy from the edge and he was more or less a free runner. But Joe Boy saw it like super early, span out of the geezer's way. God, I'm speaking like we know that we've spent too much time together. Span out of the guy's way and then ran for a first down and slid. He didn't take the hit, he slid. And it just looked like he'd been doing this all his life in the NFL, That was a fantastic play. I love the fact that, I think when we scored our last field goal, he didn't try and force it into the end zone because the Jags were only a score behind, basically. And if they'd have got the ball back, there was a chance that they could, I think, someone will correct me if I'm wrong, perhaps tie, or even with a 2-point conversion, they could win the game. So he, when there was nothing on, he just got rid of the ball. And that's real intelligence, situational intelligence. And, couldn't be happier. The only thing that's marking him down at the moment, if you look at all the stats, why he's not getting, super-duper marks, is connections with the deep ball, and hopefully that will come. That's as much as play call and wide receiver separation is down to Burrow. But if he can connect on a couple of deep, long passes, then his ratings for people who like that sort of thing will go through the roof, and that's the only thing missing at the moment. I say a couple of deep connections, which isn't necessarily on him, to be honest.
I think that's a really good point as well. I mean, you look at his yards yesterday. Tyler Boyd 7 catches for 90 yards. T. Higgins 4 for 77. The thing that he's missing, exactly like you said with the deep balls, who's the guy that's going to catch them? Because I think the obvious standout yesterday, AJ Green, 1 reception for 3 yards, and he was targeted 5 times. And I mean, through the first couple of games, we talked about AJ Green, and my overwhelming response was, he'll be fine. He just needs to shake that rust off. He's not played for a while. He's only 32. He's not, for me at 32, you'd still be probably going at, at least 90% of your former self. I thought he'd come good, but I'm genuinely, I'm not saying I'm worried, but I'm starting to get a bit worried because he just doesn't. There's a couple of balls yesterday that the old AJ would have had. Now,
there was one in particular down the right hand, not down the sideline, but a diagonal pass.
Burrow was directed traffic, wasn't he?
Yeah, there was a pass that was fired diagonally out towards the sideline. AJ seemed to have a step on his defender, but just couldn't get there, and he pulled up a little bit short, actually, I thought, after that. And it's just like, wow, maybe that explosiveness is gone. It was interesting, actually. You listen to Paul Dana Jr., as we frequently do, talking when the contract situation was being discussed about AJ, whether the team should sign him going forward to a long-term deal. And he basically said he could be this team's Larry Fitzgerald going forward, which is a perfectly valid argument. But the thing is, at the moment, you look at Fitz, who's still a very good receiver in the league. They line him up more in the slot these days. And of course, we've got a fantastic slot receiver in Tyler Boyd, who's having another great year so far. On course, I think I saw today to catch over 112 yards, which is ridiculous. If things carry on the same for him, but I think that. You'd hope that AJ regains some of his explosiveness, but then again, with all the wear and tear, the injuries that he's had, we saw with Tyler Eifert, it's not guaranteed. So the good thing at the moment is that we've got a wide receiver core certainly with Boyd and Higgins, who look pretty good, I'd say. And you add in Auden Tate, who caught a really great ball yesterday, actually, but, get him more into the mix, and Erickson and Mike Thomas, that's not a bad core. And then if you can just drop AJ in and let him go at his own pace and try and get him the ball, he's not, I think it's pretty obvious that he's not the number one target anymore, which is an odd thing to say, but after what he's done for the club and how he's played, he's not our number one receiver at this moment anymore.
I agree. It's a strong group. I think there's no doubt it's a strong group across the board. Some very, very talented players, some young guys in there. I just think it lacks speed. I think that's the one thing that we're missing. And I mean, is that John Ross? Obviously, that's the glaring miss there. I know he was inactive again yesterday, but you do need someone with that sort of burning speed that cornerbacks are going to respect and have to play off a bit, because Boyd is a slot receiver. Higgins has got speed, but I don't know if he's necessarily the guy that's going to be stretching the field. And apart from that, with Nold and Tate and Alex Erickson haven't got that sort of speed. I don't think Mike Thomas is that guy either. And then obviously you've got AJ, who was that guy in the past and very much was someone that defences, had to respect, often getting double teamed, double covered. But it's tough now. I mean, I think that's the only area, like you said originally, that the Bengals are struggling with, or Joe Burrow is struggling with, is those deep balls, because I don't think people are getting open. They're not getting the separation. But, I mean, with that in mind, and with defences probably playing up a little bit more on some of our receivers, it's even more impressive that Burrow is completing those passes at the rate he is. He's seeing the field. He's just not making silly throws. It's just been so impressive.
Absolutely. And on the other side of the ball, shout out to Jesse Bates, who's continued his fine early season form. I thought he was terrific yesterday. We just need to find some pass rush. We really do. And hopefully, Gino will be back for the Ravens game, because they have a much better offensive line and they have a much better running game, not least from the quarterback himself. So things to work on. But certainly lots of things to love yesterday, and the fact that we won just gives everyone a boost. And as you say, hopefully the confidence that will kind of give to the team will be carried on, and they can give the Ravens a game. I don't see why not. We always used to give the Ravens a game before Lamar Jackson came along. But isn't it interesting that we talk about defenses? There's been some shocking defenses all over the league. It's not just us. Some points and yards are being racked up like nothing else. Like, it's crazy. Did you see some of the games yesterday? It's like, as Jamie Rowe would call it, scorigami, sort of, 62-39 or something like that. Defenses seem to have come out of the traps quite slowly, and it's the offenses that it's almost turned into T20 cricket. Do you know what I mean? Lots of scores.
Well, I think over the years, the league's really sort of moved towards a lot of penalties favouring the offences and the rules going that way and stuff. And obviously now teams are starting at the 25 instead of the 20, and all these different things that make it slightly easier for you to sort of push down the field. But I completely agree. I mean, you got a situation yesterday where Dak Prescott's thrown for over 500 yards and losing a game.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely extraordinary. The Cleveland Browns are putting up 49 points. I mean, it's a funny time to be alive. But going on to that Ravens game, I mean, that's going to be the interesting test for the Bengals, because we got a good team out there. I think through 4 games, we're better than 1-2-1 from what I've seen. I think that's the frustrating thing, and that's where the sort of negativity and the anger came from in the last couple of weeks from all of the fans, was that, look, we're better than this. Like, we've got a good team, and I think getting that win against the Jags is massive, and going on the road to the Ravens is going to be a very interesting game, because like you said, they top 5 team in the NFL. I think most people would agree. The AFC North is so strong. I think the Browns, Steelers and Ravens are combined 9-2 or something crazy like that. It'll be a good... I mean, I think the bookies have come out and said we're a 14-point underdog.
I think that's about right.
I would say probably about right, yeah. And it'll be a big test for us. It'll be a big test for us, because if we can keep that game close, keep it within a score, or God forbid win it, I think that would be a hell of a statement for the team. It's going to be. I think everyone just wants to see progress. I think we want to see a really tight game. We want to see us take it to the Ravens, be in that game, and not get overawed by it. So, very, very excited for that one, and to see what we can build on after this week.
Absolutely. And just a shout out to Zach Taylor's play design and play calling yesterday. He took some stick a little bit from us last week, and certainly from the fans. But I thought certainly the play design was really good yesterday. And of course, I mean, I said last week, everything starts and ends with the offensive line, and the fact that we're running the ball in that second half, the play action came into play, and of course Zach loves, that's his thing, isn't it? I was talking last week about what is his identity offensive-wise, and that is it. He loves play action, loves those kind of, 3-wide sets, and there was some really imaginative stuff yesterday. There was lovely kind of screens and, as I say, some bunched formations, which confused the defense a little bit. Everything was clicking. So shout out to Zach for yesterday.
Wait. There's got to be a shout out. We can't move on without you giving a shout out to your Welsh mate yesterday. He had a good game.
Jordan Evans,
a sack, and a tackle for a loss.
He did. Well done to Jordan. He was a bit of a periphery player, isn't he? Really, but yeah, he was involved yesterday, and he had a point to prove, and he did a good job, all in all. Right, let's bring in Matt. So, hello again, Matt. You're making your return to CinciNatter, and we couldn't be happier for you to come back to us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
And a win as well. That's kind of exciting, isn't it? That's almost uncharted territory.
Yes, and so early in the year, almost September.
What did you? I mean, of particular interest. I spoke to Nathan just a little bit earlier, and the thing that was interesting me, I think, is that, and I mentioned this Zach Taylor's team, in particular this one, certainly this season, seems to be almost the complete opposite to a Marvin Lewis team, where they were great at working through their scripted plays at the start of a game. This is all generally speaking and observational. I don't have any stats to back things up or whatever, but they seem to be really good at working through their scripted plays, but then they just have a horror third quarter, and kind of it would either make or break them for that particular game. Here it seems to be the exact opposite. They start off slowly. They can't get anything going apart from a 2-minute drive at the end of the first half. And then I'm talking offensively here. Mm-hmm. And then in the third quarter, they've obviously made adjustments, and they look like a different team. And it was like that yesterday as well.
Yeah. And it's interesting, too, because with Zach Taylor being an offensive-minded coach compared to Marvin Lewis, who was a defensive coordinator previously, you would think that because the guy calling the plays on offense wasn't actually the head coach in the Marvin Lewis era, that it would have been easier for Hugh Jackson and Jay Gruden and those guys to make second half adjustments. But Taylor and Callahan and that team there on the offensive side of the football, they're definitely doing a great job with it. And outside of the kneel down, the victory formation at the end of the game, the Bengals scored on every drive in the second half. I think it was touchdowns in the first 2 drives in the second half, and then 3 field goals to finish it out. So, strong finish. I mean, definitely great to see that. 23 points in the second half.
So, one of the reasons why I think we really enjoy following you on Twitter is Matt's Monday breakdowns, where you kind of go through the film, and I know that you're going through that at the moment and putting some really interesting stuff on. What do they do in that second half, and what have they done? Because they did it against Philadelphia. A slow start, third quarter, they looked almost unstoppable. What are you noticing that they're doing at halftime to get things going? Yesterday, they really got the run game going, which is something that obviously everyone's been screaming for, to take a little bit of pressure off Joe Burrow. What have you noticed so far that they've been doing?
I think overall it's just kind of subtle adjustments in the blocking schemes once you know what actual defensive looks you're going to be getting. I think that's a big aspect of it. And yesterday, it was huge that they were able to run the ball. Because they were able to run the ball, and Zach Taylor talked about this during the week. They weren't dependent on pure drop back pass in the second half. They could run the ball, but they could also do play action pass. I think we saw more play action pass in this game. And the fact of the matter is, if you're down by 2 scores, or if you're down late in the game, or when you're in 3rd and 15, a lot of these situations, you're not getting anything out of running a play action pass. You're just wasted time because they're not buying it. They're still coming hard off the edge. So it allowed them to do that, which is going to help out the offensive line quite a bit. If the offensive line can open them some holes in the run game, they're going to help themselves out a lot with what they're doing in pass protection.
And they seemed to go back to pitching to Mixon so he could sweep around the edges, and we saw lots more movement from the offensive line yesterday. I think Jonah was on the move quite a lot. The guards were on to the next level quite quickly.
And that's what they did well at the end of last year too.
Right.
The big difference they ran, and when I talk about the toss play, like you can toss the football to the running back, but I'm not calling it a toss when they do it unless they're doing what you said and pulling some guys out in front of him, really trying to get some space. So, but that toss play where they're pulling at least one guy, they ran 11 times in the first 8 games last season and 66 times in the last 8 games. And that was really the biggest change. They ran a little bit more of some other down schemes and powers and stuff like that. But that was the biggest change in the second half of the year. And Mixon did great with that. He was able to find great cutback lanes, hit the edge sometimes. And for whatever reason, they've tried to do it. It's looked a little different. Last year I kind of had the rules figured out, and I actually posted a video on YouTube about it, and it seemed like they went away from some of the rules they had early this year. And I don't know if it's because they were getting so many stunts from some of their earlier opponents or what it was, but they got away from some of that stuff. But yeah, getting these guys out in space, I think that's the type of player they have. And you look at some of the additions they've made too. Xavier Su'a-Filo, hopefully we see again sometime soon. But he's a guy who was not a high-level free agent, but was a guy that made a lot of sense for them because he does move well, because he does pull well. He does some things pretty well in space. And he's pretty smart when it comes to picking up stunts in pass protection, which has been a problem for the Bengals at times. So if they get back to that schematically where they were before, that's going to be a real good fit for him. It definitely worked for the guys they had last year. And I think it could be good for Hakeem Adeniji whenever we get a chance to see him.
A lot of people are saying, Alex Redmond's come in, he's fixed it all straight away. That's obviously not the case. I mean, bless him, but Alex Redmond is not that good of a player. So do you think it's more about the blocking scheme rather than the players that were in yesterday?
I think it's a lot of things coming together. I think Redmond probably gave them a little bit of maybe stability at the position, that they were all kind of comfortable with him. There's maybe just a little bit more faith in that spot than they had in some of those other guys. But I think a big part of it is the level of competition. I mean, we've seen some of the best defensive lines in the league these first few weeks. Philadelphia's got a plethora of talented pass rushers. And, when you get Myles Garrett, when you get Bosa in these first couple of weeks, I mean, that was a real tough run for them. And look, the fact of the matter is they need to get better and they need to be able to take care of some of those guys because we still get to see TJ Watt twice this season. And we still get to see Myles Garrett again in a couple of weeks. So, it's not like they're going to get lucky with that in the future. But I think it all came together, but part of it is that level of competition that the Jaguars front is just not as talented as what they've seen in earlier weeks.
Just a few quick questions on the offense, because I think it's worth talking to you about the defense as well. Joe Burrow, we're going nuts. I'm going nuts, and I hate overhyping players. I really do. I don't think it's fair on the player. And, it does, we really do need to afford rookies the time to adjust to this next level. But goodness me, how good is Joe Burrow?
Yeah, he's looking great, and it was nice that finally some things were coming together around him because even in the losses, he's looked really good. One interception this weekend, but not a bad interception. Your tight end should have made the play interception on what really was pretty much a 50-50 ball in the end zone there, where Miles Jack came away with the pick off of Drew Sample's face. But he's looked really good. He's not making really mistakes like he did in the first game with that bad interception, and really moving the club and starting to build a rapport with some of his receivers. I think we're starting to see it coming. It's been there with Boyd, I really think, the whole time, and now it's starting to come with T. I think Boyd and T are definitely the future of that position group. But even those guys, we're starting to see some of the back shoulder throws coming together, but not all those catches are being made yet. So I think they're getting more comfortable with each other, but there's still another step to be taken there to really get the most out of what we can with this passing game. At the end of the day, look, Burrow's not going to win you games by himself until he starts making ridiculous plays like he did at LSU. We've seen a little bit of that with him scrambling and looking to find some guys downfield. We almost saw it with AJ on that third down early in the game. We almost saw it with T. Higgins the week before, but it turned out T. Higgins had stepped out of bounds in that play. And we haven't really seen him connect on these deep balls, which is definitely getting concerning at this point. But I think that's going to come a little bit with those receivers knowing where exactly he's going to put the ball and how exactly he's going to respond to some of those defensive looks they're getting.
You mentioned someone there in that last little sequence, AJ Green. A lot of fans over here quite rightly love him. He's been brilliant for the club for almost a decade. What are you seeing? Is he out of sorts? Has he lost what he had in terms of explosiveness, or is it just too early to tell?
I do think he's getting open, and I think he has value. He's just not being AJ right now. And all the back shoulder throws and going up and getting the ball in the sky.
Tell us what does AJ mean?
I mean, to me, when we think of AJ, we think of that guy who's going up for the jump ball, and he's coming down with it every time, and he's making these ridiculous plays down the field with that. And right now we're not really seeing that dimension in him. So I'm not as concerned. I'm more concerned with his jumping than his running. I don't feel like he's kind of coming off and planting and responding the way he once did. We have said for a while there's been concern about AJ with his injuries for obvious reasons, and also with his age. I don't think that he's done, and I've been in that camp that he can have some a few more good years. I've been in that camp all along. I have been a little bit disappointed by what I've seen. They say he's a rep guy, and maybe as things come along, he'll get a little bit more comfortable, but I don't think he's quite the same guy he was. One comparison that people make is to Larry Fitzgerald, who's still kicking right now, and he's kind of the exception to the rule with receivers of a guy who's been successful and productive well past 30. And I kind of look at AJ and I'm wondering if he needs to take a similar path to Fitzgerald, where Fitzgerald, when he got a little bit older, they kicked him inside and he became more of a big slot. And unfortunately, that's just not a great fit for the Bengals because they've got Tyler Boyd. So, I think he can have some more good years. I'm not sure how great of a fit he is for this team right now, because I feel like the things he's going to be able to do well are going to fall into Boyd's category. And I think things that Higgins can also do. And, maybe they need a third guy who's going to be a little bit more, dynamic on the edge.
Yeah, exactly as I said earlier. It's kind of like it's all very well kind of wanting AJ around to be that elder statesman, kick him inside in the slot, but we already have a really, arguably the league's best slot receiver at the moment, So interesting times. What about the defense? After the Philadelphia game, I think you were really impressed with Logan Wilson, and I remember you tweeting out that this defense is very close. What did you mean by that, and what did you make of them yesterday?
Yeah, there was a lot of negativity about this defense after that game, and I think they're a pretty good unit. They just kind of need to put some things together. And I mean, really, you look at it, they fell apart at some bad times this season. They gave up touchdowns in the end of the second half and the end of the first half to the Eagles, which allowed them to be in that position to take it into overtime and why that game was tied. They gave up touchdowns on those drives. They gave up a late touchdown to the Browns where the Browns just ran all over them. And honestly, like, they were just done. Like, I've seen that happen, and it happens with defenses. And like, I've coached in games where we've made some calls that the head coach had made some calls that to the outsider would look like stupid calls at the end of the game. But it came down to, we can't put this defense in the field again. Like, we got to go for two. We got to kick the onside kick. We got to get it back because this defense has had enough today. And I think part of that is the lack of depth and the defensive line. You know, people talk about you run the football to wear down the defensive line, and that is a strategy that does not work very well in the NFL because D lines tend to be, or because the teams with the best defenses are very deep on the defensive line. But it can work against the Bengals when you go in there and you're already banged up, and you know Mike Daniels, you know Geno Atkins. So, you know, I think they just got to that point where, you know, guys like Bledsoe and Khalil McIntyre, like, these guys are taking way more reps than they should be because of all the injuries. And I think that group was just ready to be run all over at the end of that game. Unfortunately, they were just kind of toast. So overall, like, I look at this, and I think you get Geno back. If you were healthy at defensive tackle, I think you'd be in a much better position, particularly with Geno because he brings the inside pass rush ability. Overall, you know, they really need to rehaul that defensive line next offseason. I wish I could say I was comfortable with Geno, but we're gonna have to get him back. And, you know, after what happened with AJ last year, you know, if Geno doesn't play all year, I'm certainly not going to feel good about Geno Atkins going into 2021. They need somebody else that can pressure the passer inside, and they need depth on the inside. On the edge, I think Hubbard is a good piece, but I don't think he's a pinnacle piece. You know, I don't think he's somebody that you can hang your hat on. I think he's a guy that you move around and do some different things with, which they're pretty good with. Carl Lawson, I would like to see them try and get more out of him, but in the past, what Marvin Lewis believed was that it was less was more with him, and this staff has not really seemed enthused to give him a ton of reps. So I don't know if we're ever to get there. And I think Carlos Dunlap at this point in his career is probably in a similar tier that he probably shouldn't be the full-time starter. You know, he should be a rotationary piece who I think you get more out of when you're doing that. So they really need to bring in another pass rusher in the offseason who can really contribute. And, you know, I would prefer a guy with some bulk. I mean, to find that guy that can really rush the pass from the outside, but who has the bulk to kick inside, you know, that's it's slim pickings looking for those guys. But that would be great because it would give you the versatility to, you know, be able to kick him in the 3-4 stuff and put Hubbard and Carl Lawson on the field as essentially your 3-4 outside linebackers. So that's kind of what I think is going on up front. I think they've got the pieces at linebacker. Hopefully, you know, we got to see how these young guys develop. But I've seen some good things out of Pratt this year. I like how he's progressing. I love how Logan Wilson is progressing. I think he's coming along very quickly. It was unfortunate they couldn't get him out there this weekend. Saw a touch of Bailey this weekend, not much, but, you know, Bailey and Akeem Davis-Gaither I think are talented guys too. So hopefully there's some good quality starters in there, but they definitely improved their depth at that position, which, as we talked about with the defensive line, you know, it's all about creating that depth so you're not vulnerable when you do have some injuries. And then, you know, in the defensive backfield, I think with Sean Williams back in the mix at safety, Bell, and Bates are a pretty good little trio there. William Jackson, I think, is playing very well. Look, OBJ got him a couple of times, but that's what OBJ does. That's gonna happen no matter who you have. So I think he's looked pretty good. Jesse Bates, after missing 1 million tackles in that game at safety, by the way, did look pretty good. But and then, you know, the other corner I think is a concern at the moment. Hopefully Trey Waynes is the answer, but we're not gonna know that anytime soon. But Phillips is a little, you know, just a little step short on things. Sims got some reps this weekend, and he was just he wasn't in great position a lot of the time either. So potentially you need another corner, but we'll see what's going on with Trey Waynes. I do think they really need to be a good defense to add a couple pieces and a lot of depth up front. But I think this defense, you get healthy, like you could be manageable, you can be serviceable with it.
There's lots of positives there, Matt, isn't there? Really, and where do you see this team progressing? I think they've made pretty big strides on offense actually the past couple of weeks. And I guess it's just about being consistent now, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge part of it is, like, you look at the offensive line and there's good reps. It's just there's often 3 or 4 good reps on a play and not 5, you know? And with the O-line, it doesn't do you much good if 4 out of 5 guys are doing well. So, yeah, I think if they can get a little bit more consistent with that, not put themselves in bad situations, and some of the problems they've had has been blocking from other positions as well. But yeah, it's all about being consistent and just knowing what you can get out of all those guys. I look at it this way. So, a lot of people play fantasy football, so there's a little bit better reference there for most people. So in fantasy football, obviously, you'll love having a guy like Joe Mixon this weekend was 39 points in my league. Like, you love seeing a guy do that. But the guys that drive you crazy are the guys that, like, sometimes they're really good, but then sometimes they get you like 4 points, So you're always looking in fantasy, you're looking for that running back that his floor is like 12 points. He's going to get you like 12 to 15 points, and maybe he'll have a great game and it'll do something really special for you. But at least he's going to get you some solid points there and not, put up a goose egg or single digits, something like that. I mean, it's kind of the same with real football as well. Like, you need big play guys, but you need consistent guys. You need guys that are going to bring it every play and going to have a solid performance. And when they get you the home run and they score a long touchdown, throw a deep ball, and make an interception, that's a bonus. But you need the guys that are going to always be where they need to be and like doing those little things that you don't necessarily notice because the job's getting done.
Absolutely. Well, let's hope for more consistency going forward. Matt, thank you so much for the time, as ever. Good luck with Chalk Talk, and hopefully we'll speak again soon later on in the season.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Well, a huge thank you to Matt MINICH there. He's always welcome on this podcast. And, of course, you can catch up with Matt on Cincy Jungle and the Chalk Talk podcast, which is well worth a listen. And obviously, Matt is well worth a follow on the old Twitter. And I'll just give you his handle. It's at Coach MINICH, and MINICH is spelled MINICH. So go give Matt a follow. We've got lots of correspondence, lots of happy people. So let's get stuck into those. Memphis Soul Stew at Stuart Baird 688. Happy with the win. Next week will be much tougher test, but confidence should be sky high. What is up with AJ Green? Has he lost his mojo? Is he still rusty? And I say that with massive respect as a massive fan of AJ. Do we still need him? Well, again, we spoke about it earlier, Stu, and I do think he deserves a bit more time. He's again, as we said last week, he's earned that time to get back to some semblance of his old self. And if he doesn't, then the team have really got to make a decision. Can they find a role for him on going forward on this team for what he might be? It's very difficult. Dreams of Widness at D Widness. Seeing as the head coach's responsibility is to coach the coaches, is Zach not having any coordinator experience harming the staff and therefore the team? Maybe a poorly timed question after a win, but I do think it's an issue. Again, that sort of follows on from last week's stuff, really. Well, again, we'll see, Jimmy. I think we saw a glimpse of what Zach really wants to achieve on offense yesterday. Again, let's see where we are towards the end of the season.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I think the coaching staff, like I said last week, are on the clock. Really, they've got a decent team to work with, and this year we've not so far so good in terms of the injuries. So I think we've got to look at how they perform for the rest of the year and judge them on that. They are very much on. I think the hot seat sounds a bit harsh, but they've got the talent this year, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see what they can do going down the stretch.
Stephen Fox at Steve Schlaff. Alex Redmond was the missing piece on this offense. But in all seriousness, the O-line really did step up and had a hell of a game. They've gotten a lot of flack, and rightfully so, but you have to give them praise where it's due. The Joes really shined thanks to them. Martin Greer 73. Feels great to have that Monday winning feeling. Joey Covers will make a mockery of Baltimore. -14 who day. Stuart Davis at Dutch Bath.
Solid handle.
AJ Green looks like he doesn't want to be there still. Thoughts? Respect to Randy Bullock. Been absolutely solid as a rock since that week 1 incident. O-line were much improved, but the Jags are weak. Will we see the same old O-line against better opposition? We've spoken about AJ. There's a lot of questions and comments about AJ, but I think we've relayed what we think about 18. As for Randy, he's dead right. I think Paul Dana said, I don't know whether it was a joke or not, but he said that Randy became the Bengals' most accurate field goal kicker in history yesterday. I'm not quite sure whether that was true or not, but he's certainly been bang on the money ever since that the calves incident in week 1.
Yeah, you got to give credit to the geezer. We were sort of being quite positive about him at the start of the season, just before that, and he has been quite reliable, dare I say it. I think it comes down with Randy when there's going to be a big kick in a big game. I think that's when you want to see him at his best, and I guess that goes with all kickers. But when the money's on the line and we're 6-6 or whatever, somewhere down the stretch, and we've got a chance at the playoffs, and there's a couple of seconds left, and the geezer's rolling up for a 42-yarder, that's when we've got to see what he's got in the locker.
Yes, agreed. Josh at To Real Josh Warner. I think it's rust or still isn't 100% from his injury in camp. Talking about AJ, he was flying around in the summer. All the videos they showed kind of looked to me he came up limp on right lower ankle on that missed throw. Yeah, I mentioned that. But I think go on.
Sorry, man. I was going to say, a few times I've seen AJ on the screen this year. I thought he's injured. He just looks like he's grimacing a bit on his face. He just looks a little bit uncomfortable, and he's coming up a bit gimpy when he's getting up. There's a good point about, is he potentially still carrying something from camp? Obviously, he barely played in camp as they held him out with that. I think it was an ankle injury or something, was it, or calf injury? It is worrying because he doesn't look. It doesn't look like he's just like completely gassed and he can't catch anything. It's more just he looks a bit uncomfortable. Is the best way I would describe it.
I think also frustrated as well. I do think he looks frustrated. But I would also say that, it's the age-old thing. Don't judge videos in camp until you've seen players actually playing football during proper live games, because videos from training camp where they look fantastic and whatever kind of mean nothing until they're actually playing at game speed against good players and, running their routes and kind of being physical and all the rest of it. It's a completely different scenario. Anyway, Wee Man Syndrome at Or Cameron, who came on to yesterday's tailgate. Good to meet you, Cameron, yesterday. Relieved to finally get a win behind us. The O-line were not perfect by any means, but definitely improved. Success in the running game opened up some more opportunities for play action. D made enough crucial stops to get it done, despite some key injuries. Positive steps. Jamie at Trequart Beaster. Some credit to Top Bant's Jim Turner, the line, and even incredibly, Bobby Hart for keeping Joe upright, and the other Joe with plenty of holes. The caveat is that we were playing the Jags. Ravens next week is a much tougher task. If they pass that test, I might get off their case. The defense, however, was dreadful, and I can't help but think that Lamar Jackson is going to torch us. He's got a point. We've got to step it up. But if we do get Geno back, and I do wonder whether they dip into free agency to get a replacement for Mike Daniels, who's now been put on IR, that might happen. But getting Geno back will be a huge thing, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Desperately need Geno back, and hopefully he's healthy and ready to contribute. I think the defence is holding on, isn't it? I think situationally the defence hasn't played well, and that's been the bigger issue. Is at the end of the half yesterday, the Jags had something ridiculous, 50 seconds left, no timeout.
And they got down to our 2-yard line or something.
Yeah, and you know what I mean? They could have easily got 6 seconds left. And you look in hindsight, they lose the game by 1 score. You think if they'd gone for that then and picked up 4 points, an extra 4 points, that game looks different. And you can't let that happen. You can't let go. I mean, you look at the talent on the Jags offense as well. It's not that. I mean, that Chark's a good player. He's quite quick.
Yeah, and Chenault, the rookie Chenault, the receiver, looks a good player as well, to be fair. And Minchew's Minchew's pretty good. He's not. I don't think he'll ever set the world alight, but he's pretty good, you know.
Yeah, he's a bit of a game manager, sort of bottom half quarterback. I don't know. I just think the defense is going to. If you're playing like that at home against the Jags, exactly like Jamie said, there is a question there when you go up against Lamar Jackson and all of his weapons that's going to be a bit of a bloodbath. But there's still a lot of young guys, and there's a lot of guys that are inexperienced and learning. Akeem Davis-Gaither, obviously Logan Wilson was out yesterday as well, which is a shame, and they're carrying a couple of knocks back there. But I think you get Geno back. Hopefully Logan Wilson's back next week as well. They're learning. That's the most important thing. But yeah, you still. I know Zach Taylor yesterday rather generously gave one of the game balls to the entire defense, but you can't. And I think if you want to be a good team, you don't really want to be shipping 25 at home to the Jags.
True, but as I say, all over the league, you look at what's happening, and defenses are pretty average at the moment. Anyway, Peter Dadswell at Dadders loved how Zach Taylor awarded the match ball to, amongst others, Joe Mixon. Then at the end, Joe Mixon awarded his match ball to Coach Taylor. Team spirit right there. Loved Joe Burrow saying his match ball will go back in the bag as he's very particular about the balls he throws. He goes on to say, without Geno and Daniels, you have to admit that holding them under 90 yards rushing was a good effort. Obviously playing from behind in the second half, they had to throw it more. I mean, that's the flip side. They did hold Robinson to under 100 yards rushing, which was a positive, definitely. Andrew Dockerell at Dockers77 never really doubted that win. Worried by the lack of pass rush, just really lacking a premium athlete with bend on the edge. Very reliant on the bull rush. The entire offseason has been built around stopping the Ravens' run game, so interested to see how that goes. Indeed. Who else have we got? Odat at DZE. Yesterday's game gave us a small glimpse into what could be. Joe Burrow is a geezer of phenomenal talent, and our progress as a team and franchise is delicately poised. One win doesn't define what we are, but it shows great promise if the coaches and front office get things right. Duncan Yeadon at Slam Dunk the Funk says a win builds
solid handle,
builds confidence and momentum. Killian at Malloy _00, huge win, albeit the Jags look pretty bad. We still got the win. If we didn't win that, a lot of people might have started to panic. Very true. Who else? And that's about it, I think, for now. So, yeah, I mean, Duncan also asked us to discuss John Ross, but I don't know. He's going to have to do well to force his way back in the team at the moment. I think poor old John is done at the moment, unless something.
I'd love to see him get some time over Alex Erickson. I've been a big critic of John Ross because I think there's a lot of unfulfilled potential there, but I would like him to. He just offers you so much more than Alex Erickson does. Erickson's a safe pair of hands on returns and decent in the slot, but we just miss it. Even if you're throwing Ross out there as a decoy, I just think that would be a slightly more. It gives you a little bit more. I don't know if Zach Taylor's trying to send a message to John Ross. I mean, he's not got much time. Because at the end of this season, Ross is off by all accounts. So I don't know. It's a shame because a fully healthy, fully producing John Ross could take this wide receiver core to another level with his speed and ability to take the top off of defenses. So it's just a real shame, really. There's not much else to say.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know, something's going on with John, or the coaches just aren't seeing enough from him, or the commitment's not there. I don't know, personal issues. You don't know, do you? But it feels like a real sad state of play when you've got a top 10 wide receiver from a few drafts ago that can't even crack the game day lineup. It's rather strange.
Yeah, I think you said it. Out of everything, it is a great shame, because he's a great guy, is John. He's a lovely man. He comes across as, and he's obviously got the speed and the talent. We've seen him do it in flashes. Just can't do it consistently. And I think maybe the coaches, let's face it, and John wasn't their pick. Back in the day, he was Marvin's pick. Although if you read the reports, he wasn't necessarily Marvin's pick either. But I think he's done. It'd be great to see him in a few cameos, maybe towards the end of the season or whatever. Because I do think you're right. I mean, he still has stuff to offer. But I think
it'd be a fascinating pickup for someone in free agency. It'd be a fascinating pickup if you got the right coach potentially, or the right scheme for him, or you could work him into your offense in the right situations and just got his head right, or whatever you need to get right. He could be a really good. He won't be able to command a huge fee in free agency, I wouldn't have thought, but he'll represent an extremely high upside buy for a team this off-season.
Absolutely agree with you. So there we go. Everyone's bubbling and happy and sending messages, and Nathan's naked at the other end of the Skype line. I can just feel it, and everyone's very happy.
I was, mate. I'm on my lunch break at work, which is
Same here.
My enthusiasm.
Well, you can carry on the good vibes this week by getting in touch with us and telling us what you think and saying hello to us on Twitter at @Houday_UK, on Facebook at Bengals UK, on YouTube at Bengals UK. We're everywhere at the moment. So thank you very much for your correspondence, and thank you in advance for your future correspondences. Thank you very much also to Matt MINICH. Always a pleasure to talk to Matt. And again, for me, he's the best kind of, and I use this as a compliment, an amateur analyst, an armchair analyst. He really does know what he's talking about. He's coached football before. So go and follow Matt on Twitter and listen to Chalk Talk. It's really great. So until next week, we are playing the Ravens. Who knows what's going to happen? Let's hope they step it up and really kind of throw themselves in there and be competitive and give the Ravens a game, because I think we're capable of doing it. But it'll be interesting to see. So until next week, it is a Houday from me.
And a Houday from me. Cheers, guys.
And it should also be noted that the views and opinions expressed within this podcast do not reflect those of the Cincinnati Bengals organisation.